There are losses that simply end a season. And then there are losses that open a conversation far bigger than the final score. The Philadelphia Eagles' playoff elimination was not just the end of another year. It was the trigger for a debate that just days ago seemed unthinkable. The future of Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia. When the Eagles fell to the San Francisco 49ers in the wild card round, the feeling wasn't just disappointment. It was deep frustration. A frustration that had been building all season and finally exploded at the worst possible moment. An expensive, talented offense that looked stuck. Conservative decisions. A lack of identity. A lack of courage in decisive moments. All of it came rushing back the second the clock hit 0. And it was in that moment that a rumor began to circulate. Quiet at first, almost absurd on the surface, but growing louder as analysts, commentators, and fans started to say out loud what many had already been thinking in private. What if Nick Sirianni is no longer the right coach to lead this team? The name that surfaced in that conversation was a heavy one. A very heavy one. John Harbaugh. At first mention, the natural reaction is to dismiss it. John Harbaugh is an established head coach, a Super Bowl champion, the very definition of stability in Baltimore. Nick Sirianni, meanwhile, is still relatively young in the role, recently won a Super Bowl, and maintains internal support. On paper, the idea makes little sense. But the NFL rarely moves on cold logic alone. It moves on context, timing, and pressure. And right now, the context in Philadelphia is explosive. The season ended with an offense that never truly found its rhythm. Even with Jalen Hurts healthy, even with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley, the Eagles failed to impose themselves offensively when it mattered most. Against a 49ers defense riddled with injuries, the team scored just 19 points at home, in a playoff game. That does not go unnoticed. It never does. The firing of Kevin Patullo was the first move, an expected move, almost automatic, but it does not solve the larger problem. Patullo was Sirianni's direct choice, his right-hand man, a core part of the offensive philosophy that collapsed in January. And when a plan fails that completely, the focus inevitably moves up the chain. Nick Sirianni is now at the center of the storm. It's important to be clear about one thing. No one is saying Sirianni is a bad coach. Quite the opposite. He brought stability, he won, he built a competitive culture, and he led the Eagles to the top of the NFL. But the NFL is not a place for eternal gratitude. It's a league driven by constant evaluation. And the question now is simple, though uncomfortable. Does this team still fully respond to Nick Sirianni's leadership? The Eagles' behavior in critical moments raises doubts, excessively conservative decisions, a lack of aggression when the situation demanded it, an offense that looked like it was playing not to make mistakes rather than to win. In the playoffs, that often reflects leadership, not just execution. That's where the name John Harbaugh enters the conversation as a symbol, not necessarily as an actual plan. Harbaugh represents everything the Eagles failed to show in this decisive game: composure, emotional control, adaptability, and unquestioned authority inside the locker room. He's the kind of coach who changes the atmosphere the moment he walks into the room. A leader tested in playoff battles, accustomed to reinventing teams around different quarterbacks, different styles, and constantly evolving rosters. When analysts started mentioning Harbaugh in discussions about Philadelphia, they weren't necessarily saying he would come. They were saying something deeper, that the Eagles may need to reconsider the level of leadership required to fully maximize this roster. Because the roster is ready. That much is undeniable. Jalen Hurts is not the problem. He wasn't perfect against the 49ers, but he is far from the weak link. The offensive line remains among the best in the league. The skill position group is elite. The defense, even with its flaws, kept the game alive until the very end. What was missing was clear direction when the game tightened, and that ultimately falls on the head coach. Nick Sirianni is an emotional leader. He lives every game, every snap, every decision intensely. That can be a strength in many moments, but it can also become noise when the team needs calm. Recent images of him engaged in heated sideline confrontations did not go unnoticed. In January, everything is magnified. Fans notice. The media notices. The locker room feels it. And this is not about an open revolt against Sirianni. Not yet. It's about something far more dangerous. Doubt. Once doubt sets in, it grows quickly. The Eagles are in a delicate moment of their championship window. This is not a rebuild. This is not the beginning of a cycle. It's the middle of a window that can close fast if the wrong decisions are made. And it's precisely in moments like this that franchises make bold, sometimes unpopular, moves to avoid wasting a roster at its peak. That's exactly how it happened with Andy Reid years ago. At the time, that decision also seemed unthinkable. And in hindsight, it was the move that allowed the Eagles to reinvent themselves and eventually win again. That doesn't mean history will repeat itself, but it serves as a reminder. Philadelphia has never been afraid of hard decisions. And there's one detail that makes this discussion even heavier. The Eagles didn't just lose to a better team on that day, they lost to a team that was vulnerable, undermanned, and defensively exposed. That matters in internal evaluations. Losing to a fully loaded opponent is one thing. Losing to a wounded one without capitalizing on the openings is something entirely different. That nuance changes the tone and increases the pressure on those making the decisions. The John Harbaugh rumor doesn't need to become reality to serve its purpose. It already has. It applied pressure. It exposed the debate. It forced the organization, the coaching staff, and even the players to reflect on the current path. Nick Sirianni knows this. He knows the margin for error has shrunk dramatically. The choice of the next offensive coordinator will effectively serve as a final test. If Sirianni nails it, restores the offense's identity, and leads the Eagles back to a deep playoff run, this debate will fade quickly. But if the offense remains inconsistent, if the same issues resurface in big games, the conversation about more drastic changes will return with full force. And next time, it won't be just a rumor. Right now, John Harbaugh represents the archetype of the coach the Eagles might pursue if they decide a full leadership reset is necessary. A coach above any player, above any coordinator, above any ego. A coach who sets the tone for the entire franchise. This is not a personal attack on Nick Sirianni. It's the brutal reality of the NFL. The Eagles stand at a crossroads. One path leads to continuity with adjustments. The other leads to a radical break. For now, the franchise is still on the first path, but the very existence of this rumor shows the second is not off the table in many minds. The offseason will be long. Every Sirianni interview will be dissected. Every hire will be interpreted. Every decision will be viewed as a signal of what's coming. The trust is still there, but it is no longer unlimited. And perhaps that's the biggest message behind this seemingly absurd conversation about John Harbaugh in Philadelphia. No one is untouchable. Not even a championship-winning head coach. The loss to the 49ers didn't just end a season. It opened a deep evaluation of leadership, identity, and direction. And while John Harbaugh's name may never officially land on the Eagles' table, the debate he represents is already happening. Quiet, uncomfortable, but inevitable. The question now isn't whether Nick Sirianni will be fired tomorrow. The question is whether he can quickly prove that he's still the right man to lead a roster built to win right now. Because in Philadelphia, when the talent is there and the results don't follow, patience tends to be short, and the NFL does not wait.